This was the little cheetah's most desperate day. Right before its eyes, its mother leapt at a full-grown lion to protect it. But how could a cheetah possibly stand a chance against a lion? With just one strike, the lion killed her on the spot. Terrified by the horrific scene, the young cheetah froze in fear. But what it didn't realize was that a greater danger was quietly creeping closer. With the lion closing in step by step, the cub had no choice but to hide in the tall grass, trembling in fear. It wasn't until nightfall that it dared to slowly step out. Without its mother's protection, the little cheetah was completely exhausted and starving. It wandered aimlessly until it stumbled through the fence of the reserve and wobbled its way onto the highway. Everyone thought the little cheetah would be crushed beneath the wheels, yet unexpectedly, it was spotted by Peter and his son as they drove by. Seeing the little cheetah shaking all over, Peter immediately realized it must have escaped from the wildlife reserve. Considering how young it was, something terrible must have happened to the mother. She would never have let her cub wander off alone otherwise. So, the father and son brought the little cheetah back to their lodge. Zan gently stroked the furry little creature. He knew it must be starving, but had no idea how to feed it. That's when Peter plucked the petals from a rose and crafted a makeshift bottle. Sure enough, as soon as the sweet milk touched its mouth, the cub began gulping it down hungrily. The sight of the fluffy cub drinking milk melted Zan's heart. He immediately asked if they could adopt it, but Peter explained that the cheetah was now homeless, and while they could take care of it for now, they couldn't keep it forever. One day, the cheetah would have to return to the wild. Just like one day, he and Zan's mother wouldn't be able to protect him forever either. And so, the little cub was brought back to their farm. When Kristen heard they'd taken in a cheetah cub, she too was charmed by its cuteness. From that day forward, the little cheetah had a new human family. It had the love of Zan and his parents and a beautiful name, Duma. Duma lived without a care in the world. It played in the chicken coop, caused trouble in the barn. It quickly became the beloved darling of the family. To help Duma keep its wild instincts, Peter even spent a fortune building it a treehouse and trained its speed by riding alongside it on a motorcycle. But, as with all happy times, life had its cruel interruptions. One day, while plowing the field, Peter suddenly collapsed. Zan was terrified, and together with Duma, hurried to bring his father back home. They thought it was just a fainting spell. But Peter ended up staying in the hospital for a long time. During those lonely days, only Duma kept Zan company. When Peter finally came home, his head had been shaved. But when Zan saw his father return home, he was overjoyed. What he didn't know was that Peter had been diagnosed with brain cancer, and his mother hadn't told him, not wanting to worry him. Maybe because he knew his time was running out, Peter went to Zan, looked at the nearly grown Duma, and said, "It's time to take Duma back." But after everything they'd been through together, Zan had formed a deep bond with Duma. He didn't want to let him go. Then Peter said something that made the mature Zan agree with his decision. He's a wild animal, remember? The wildness is something he knows without even notice. It's in his bones. It's in his blood. Like a memory, yeah? Like how I know I belong here. On Grandpa's farm. They planned a route. The destination was far to the northwest, just across a large river where antelope and wildebeest roam freely. A paradise for big cats. Their plan was perfect, but reality hit hard and fast. One day Peter felt his strength failing. He looked at Duma with sorrow in his eyes. Duma seemed to sense it too, and gazed back at him with a deep, soulful stare. That night, Zan was woken by the sound of Duma whimpering in grief. That was the night Zan lost his father. He stood by his father's grave, overwhelmed with sorrow, unsure of how to face the world without him. Kristen was equally devastated, but life has to go on. Kristen couldn't manage the farm on her own. She decided to rent it out and move to her sister's home in the city. As for Duma, he would have to be taken to a shelter. Zan couldn't accept that, but life rarely lets us choose. And so, with Duma in tow, mother and son left their home and headed toward the bustling city. Zan didn't say a word the entire way. Kristen did her best to comfort him, but Zan wasn't listening. All he could think about was his father's final wish, to return Duma to the grasslands, not abandon him in a shelter. Now far from the wide-open farm, Duma was kept inside the house. He stood quietly by the window, letting out low, mournful cries. It was clear he couldn't adjust to the confined space. Hearing those sounds broke Zan's heart. Kristen tried to reassure him, saying the shelter staff would come in a couple of days. But it wasn't just Duma who was struggling. Zan felt out of place too. On his first day of school, he stuck out like a sore thumb. He looked distracted and out of energy during class. And back home, Duma caused trouble. When Kristen went to pick up Zan, Duma snuck out and followed the car all the way to school. When people saw a cheetah roaming the streets, they quickly reported it to the police. As Zan sat listlessly in class, he suddenly spotted Duma at the window and jumped up in shock. Just as the teacher was about to scold this unruly new student, the school alarm rang out. They had to evacuate the students immediately. Zan saw a team of armed officers arrive at the school, and he immediately rushed off to find Duma. But just as he reached the restroom, a group of bullies cornered him. They shoved him to the ground, and just as he struggled, a low, menacing growl echoed through the hallway. It was Duma. Seeing Zan being attacked, Duma let out a thunderous roar that sent the bullies fleeing in terror. They were so scared, they didn't even stop to pick up the wad of cash they dropped. Without hesitation, Zan grabbed the money. He didn't know it yet, but that very roll of cash would end up saving their lives. Taking advantage of the chaos at school, Zan led Duma up a hillside, the only patch of wild, untouched land in the entire city. Looking out at the sprawling cityscape, then back at Duma by his side, Zan felt it deep in his heart. This place wasn't right for him, and it definitely wasn't right for Duma. So he made a bold decision. He left a note for his mother, took off Duma's collar, said his silent goodbye to his father, and climbed onto his father's motorcycle. He was determined to fulfill the promise they never got to keep. And just like that, a boy and his cheetah set off on an unknown journey. The motorcycle tore down the endless road, slicing through the vast open land. There might be countless dangers ahead, but isn't that what life is all about? As long as you're on the road, everything is worth it. They crossed remote wastelands, soaking in the thrill of freedom. But eventually, the fuel ran dry. The motorcycle sputtered to a stop in the middle of nowhere. With no one around for miles and only a little water left, Zan took a short break before pushing the heavy bike forward on foot. Under the scorching sun, exhaustion set in fast. After what felt like forever, he finally saw something in the distance, a dark shape against the bright sky. It was the wreckage of a crashed plane, and the shadow it cast brought a sliver of relief from the blazing heat. Completely exhausted, Zan quickly drifted into a deep sleep. Before dawn the next day, a man appeared on the horizon, heading straight for the motorcycle. The sound of an engine starting up jolted Zan awake. He crept out and saw a man trying to steal the bike. Hey! What do you think you're doing? What are you doing? You get me! Zan confronted him, but the man ignored him and kept fiddling with the fuel-less bike. Seeing it was just a kid, the man put away the small knife he had. Hi, I'm going south. Do you have a problem with it? We're going west. Where? You at west? My buddy and I. Oh. But when he noticed the cheetah standing nearby, his arrogance vanished. He cautiously pulled out the knife again and began backing away, eyes locked on Duma. Zan seized the moment and asked the man if he had any water. The man said he'd need something in return, so Zan offered him a ride once the bike was fixed. With that, Zan got the water, and even made sure Duma had a drink too. Does this thing work if you have gas? That's when the man, Ripkuna, realized he'd been tricked. But he actually admired Zan's cleverness. Still, with no food, limited water, and a broken-down motorcycle, their odds of surviving the desert, let alone reaching the river 10 days away, were slim. Ripkuna eyed the cheetah and his own little lemur, then asked Zan, "When the time comes, which one do you want to eat first? The big one or the small one?" It was clear he was counting on the animals as a last resort. But Zan had another idea. He noticed the wind picking up and saw some torn fabric in the wreckage. He fashioned a large sail and modified the motorcycle. Using the wind, they set off once again. The breeze lifted their spirits, chasing away the weight of despair. At one point, Ripkuna told Zan to stop. The hilltop they'd reached, he believed, had water. They dug with all their strength, and unbelievably, they struck water. With fresh hope and full bellies, they rested. Then suddenly an ostrich bolted across their path. Zan told Duma to give chase. Sensing danger, the ostrich ran and Duma shot off after it. Zan followed and found Duma had discovered several ostrich eggs. Ripkuna was stunned. He suddenly got greedy and tried to persuade Zan to sell Duma to a rich man, saying they'd never have to worry about houses, cars, or money again. But Zan firmly said, "No, I'm not selling my friend, don't even think about it." When Ripkuna found out Zan planned to return Duma to the grasslands, he scoffed, calling it a fool's dream. That place was full of dangerous animals, any one of which could easily kill a boy. That night, Ripkuna changed his tone. He claimed to know the area well and offered to accompany Zan for part of the journey. Zan happily agreed. They set off the next day. But Zan, ever cautious, double-checked their direction and realized Ripkuna was leading them the wrong way. He didn't confront him, though. Instead, he stayed alert and looked for the right moment to break away. In a deserted town, Ripkuna found a weapon and started bragging about it to Zan. When the distant roar of helicopter blades filled the air, without warning, Ripkuna yanked Zan into hiding. And just like that, Zan missed the chance to reunite with his mother. That night, Ripkuna struck up a conversation. He asked, "Do you know why cheetahs have 2 black tear marks on their faces?" Zan, relying on his animal knowledge, said, "It's to help block out the sun while they hunt." But Ripkuna shook his head and said, "No, a long time ago, a cheetah lost her cub. She searched for days, crying nonstop. The tears carved those marks into her face." Duma's eyes widened in surprise. The next day, Ripkuna discovered a mine shaft and went inside, hoping to find diamonds. Sensing his chance, Zan grabbed Duma and ran, but before he could get far, the mine collapsed. Without thinking, Zan ran back in, risking everything. He dug frantically until Ripkuna's face emerged from the rubble. Then, Zan stopped and said, "Why did you lie to me?" Zan told Ripkuna he had known all along. He planned to take him back to the city and sell Duma for a big payday. With that, Zan threw the shovel into the sand. And just like that, the two went their separate ways. Zan took the weapon with him, and even brought Ripkuna's little pet lemur, worried the man might end up eating it. But as they got closer to their destination, the dangers only grew. Eventually, Zan reached the mighty river his father had spoken of. But the rushing waters stood in his way like a wall. So he took apart his backpack and built a simple raft. But Duma, sensing something was wrong, kept growling and refused to get on. After Zan's repeated urging, Duma finally stepped onto the raft. Unaware of the danger ahead, Zan lay down on the raft and quickly fell asleep. Duma, however, remained alert, scanning the water anxiously. It had spotted them, crocodiles, lurking along the riverbank. Duma's unusual behavior finally caught Zan's attention. And then, disaster struck. The raft hit a patch of rapids, snapping apart in an instant. Both Zan and Duma were thrown into the river. The noise alerted the crocodiles, and they started swimming toward them. Terrified, Zan screamed Duma's name while frantically paddling for the shore. Thankfully, he made it, but Duma turned back, because the little lemur had followed, and was now in danger. After rescuing the lemur, Zan and Duma disappeared into the nearby reeds. But just as they emerged from the tall grass, a herd of buffalo stampeded toward them. Duma acted fast, drawing the herd away to protect Zan. The move saved him, but Duma got separated and ended up caught in a hunter's trap. Zan had no idea. Worried sick, he began searching for Duma. Night fell and still no sign of him. Instead, Zan attracted the attention of wild animals. He climbed a tree to hide. A massive spider crawled across his face, and he held his breath in fear. Below him, a wild boar circled, hungry and ready. He thought he'd survive the worst, but the moment he climbed down, the boar charged from the shadows. Zan ran for his life but tripped and hit the ground hard. As the beast opened its jaws, Zan fainted from sheer terror. When he came to, Duma was beside him. Ripkuna had returned just in time to save them. Zan thanked him and apologized for leaving without a word. Ripkuna admitted he really had planned to sell Duma for money. Then he opened up about why he was so obsessed with money. To be a big man. Went to the big city to make big money. But I did not find work at. And soon I was a small man that did small things. I ended up in the biggest jail you ever see.
That is a place I never want to go to again, do you understand?
My mother probably hates me. 'Cause I left her. Mothers never stop loving their children. Just then, they noticed Duma had locked onto a group of antelope. Excitedly, they thought they'd finally found a feast. But with no hunting experience, Duma lost the prey almost instantly. Desperate to eat, Zan and Ripkuna set their sights on a house in the distance, where a lively party was underway. The next day, Zan disguised himself as a lost traveler and slipped into the crowd. He released a snake, creating panic and chaos. In the confusion, they snatched some food and finally had a decent meal with their 2 animals. To thank Ripkuna for saving his life, Zan took out the roll of cash and handed it to him. But Ripkuna said many people died chasing money, and he didn't need it anymore. Hearing that, Zan immediately got ready to throw the money into the river. Ripkuna was speechless. Only then did he take the money, carefully sealed it in a bottle, and even split the diamonds he had found, giving half to Zan. After all they'd been through, the two set off again together. Back on dry land, Duma stumbled upon a bloody animal carcass and began devouring it greedily. Zan tried to stop him, but Duma bared its teeth, snarling fiercely. Zan froze, unsure of what to do. Ripkuna calmly explained, "That's a wild animal's instinct." The sudden change in Duma rattled Zan. He sat off to the side, quietly heartbroken. Seeing this, Ripkuna playfully placed his hat on Duma's head to cheer him up. That night, they found shelter in a cave. Staring at the ancient paintings on the walls, Zan was lost in thought. The glory of past civilizations can vanish into dust in the blink of an eye. He admitted he resented his father for leaving so suddenly. He couldn't understand why things had to end this way, but Ripkuna comforted him. "People go when they are ready to go. Not when you are. We are all just travelers on the same river. Grandparents, parents." But while comforting Zan, something stirred in his own heart. He made a decision. He was going home. And just beyond this grassland was his home. But just as they continued on, a new threat appeared. Tsetse flies, drawn by the scent of human blood, swarmed toward them. Ripkuna grabbed Zan and ran as fast as he could. But legs can't outrun wings. The flies quickly caught up and surrounded them. Ripkuna wrapped Zan in a blanket, shielding him, while he himself, bare-armed and exposed, took the full assault. By nightfall, Ripkuna looked pale and drained, barely hanging on. To make matters worse, they were surrounded. Shadowy animals prowled the hills. They needed fire to survive the night. But then it began to rain. Wet wood wouldn't catch fire. In desperation, Ripkuna pulled out the money and used it as kindling. At last they had fire, and for a moment they could rest in its warmth. But Ripkuna's condition kept worsening. Without hesitation, Zan tied Duma down and set off alone to find help. Seeing Zan leave, Duma struggled and managed to break free from the rope. But instead of finding Zan, it came across something else, its own kind. Meanwhile, Zan pushed on with everything he had, and finally found a village. The local tribespeople used their traditional methods to heal Ripkuna. Once he was out of danger, they removed their ceremonial masks. And when they saw Ripkuna's face, they gasped. It was him. Ripkuna had come home. These people were his family. Everything was different from what Ripkuna had imagined. He thought his mother and wife would scold him, but instead everyone rejoiced. They didn't care if he brought back riches. They were just happy he was alive. Watching this, Zan felt deeply moved, but also strangely alone. He wandered out to the grassland and saw Duma playing with a group of cheetahs. A quiet loneliness washed over him. His father had been right. Duma belonged to the wild. Just then, Duma suddenly appeared beside him. Zan stroked his head, just like always, but deep down he knew everything had changed. Ripkuna and Zan took one final walk across the open plains together. Meanwhile, back at the farm, Kristen worked distractedly. Where had her son gone after all this time? Just as she was losing hope, a tiny figure on a motorcycle appeared on the horizon. There was no mistaking that silhouette. Kristen dropped everything and ran to her son. And Zan, too, finally let go of his burdens and began his life anew.